Today on the Hub at Path podcast.
We run a job search club. It's a drop-in, anybody's invited, and we can, assist with that. We talk as a group. It's really facilitated in a way that they're engaging with each other and their experiences, but there is a staff member there that kind of guide it and gives them tips and tools and maybe some resources in certain areas that they're finding that they're struggling with.
Welcome everybody to the Hub at Path podcast, where we discuss tips, tricks, and best practices for employment professionals in the employment and career services sector. My name is Kevin, and today I'm joined by Tara and Sandra from St. Leonard's. In today's conversation, we will talk about caseload management, increasing caseload sizes, keeping retention clients engaged, and cultivating a positive culture for employment professionals. Thank you for your time and attention, and enjoy. We're going to dive right in. I want to start off because I think one of the things that we want to try to identify is potentially how can we kind of group our clients into maybe manageable chunks. And so like when I've given a tiny bit of thought to this, probably not so much as a lot of people in the room, but generally, I've thought about, okay, well, if I have a whole bunch of people who don't have application materials, maybe I can group those people together. Or if I have a whole bunch of people who don't have interview skills, well, let's group them together and see if I can kind of work in chunks in order to kind of better serve the clients. Which leads me kind of to my first question here, and that's how do you go about kind of partitioning your clients, if at all? And well, how do you do that? And do you find it useful? And do you find it helpful for the work that you do?
So over here at St. Leonard's Branch Employment Center, we follow a different model than most people. So I have a dedicated team of 9 employment consultants. Sandra oversees 3 business developers. So once job entry has taken place, the business developer takes over the retention piece. And we have found that by building that rapport and having more people involved, it tends to keep the active caseload for the employment consultants down because they don't have to do that retention piece. All of the employment consultants, and I mean, this is a bit of added admin work, I'm not going to lie, but they all have a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, we have it set up. So they put in the last time they had interaction with the client. And then the next column is set up for them with formulas. It changes color from green to yellow to red so that it is set with the expected contact timeframes. Right. Mm-hmm. So when they look at their spreadsheet and they see people going yellow, they know they got a few days before they go red and they need to call. And that visual seems to help them maintain their caseload a little better. It is a bit more admin work because they have to use a second spreadsheet, but they have found that works best for them because they can see at a glance who needs to be contacted and where things are going.
And is this in addition to using FedCap Cares?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I said, we added a little piece in there, but unfortunately we haven't found a report that does exactly what we wanted to do in FedCap. So this was our workaround just to help keep them in line because you're right, they're doing anywhere between 6 and 8 appointments a day. On top of you need to deal with phone calls and stuff coming in. But that's where we find our team works really well. They connect with their business developer. The business developer could do outreach for them. Mm-hmm. And that keeps things rolling the way we want. Business developers could do quick interactions with clients. So if a client's in desperate need to fix something on their resume or they need a support, they can't get a hold of their caseworker because they're going from appointment to appointment. The business developer, even myself or Sandra, picks those pieces up. So we work very well as a team together and keep things connected that way. We follow a walk-in model. Mm-hmm. So I have employment consultants booked out all day. Their only job is to meet with people who walk in. We're averaging anywhere from 6 to 10 intakes a day. And we find that when you meet them at the walk-in process, they're more engaged because we found them and connected with them in the moment. We found by booking intakes, we were losing them. Anywhere between 50 and 75% of our intakes ended up being no-shows. Because when their appointment's 3 days from now, they no longer have the motivation to do it. Right? So we like to capture them in the moment, so that we can capitalize on their motivation at that point.
Yeah, and I've noticed that so a lot of service providers are moving to the kind of walk-in model there, which I think makes a lot of sense, because especially like 3 days, okay, but if you're booking them, 2-3 weeks out, chances are you're far less likely to end up making that initial intake and making that everything actually happen in the moment. And yeah, that can certainly be very difficult. Yeah. Now, so 8 appointments per day, if we kind of bring that out to 5 days a week, that'd be 40 appointments. And then over the course of 2 weeks, this is a problem, because I did the math and if you have a caseload of over 80 people, then and you need to reach out to each person once every 2 weeks, the math doesn't math. But you were saying that for kind of short-term help, that sometimes those business developers are playing a big role in that. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
I can touch on that piece. So when an intake is done with the client, it is done with the employment consultant, but we're presented as the business developer and the employment consultant are presented right away from the get-go as a team. So they are a team. So although, yes, the business developer takes over at the retention point, they are active in the pre-employment as well. So they work together as a team to kind of support. So things like Tara had already mentioned, like we can step in to help with like supports, or last minute appointments if say they have an interview coming up or something, and their EC is all booked up. There's also mock interviews, those kind of things that we step in for. If we've also developed some other tools that can be used, not necessarily related to that team, but some tools that we've helped to kind of bridge that gap and have that engagement piece still going without actually each EC individually meeting with clients. Can be like we started job search clubs. So every 2 weeks we run a job search club. It's a drop-in, anybody's invited, and we can, assist with that. So we talk as a group. So it's really facilitated in a way that they're engaging with each other and their experiences, but there is a staff member there that kind of guide it and gives some tips and tools and maybe some resources in certain areas that they're finding that they're struggling with. Other things that we've kind of put in play or will be in play shortly is we do our own internal workshops. So we would have one staff member, or like myself or Tara, or a workshop facilitator going over those basics. So like how to fill out applications or interview skills, how to navigate Indeed, all those kind of things that can be done as a group, but could be very time consuming on an employment consultant side. We've also
and that
right.
Oh, I just wanted to cut in for a second there, because I think that the math is starting to math when you do group work. And I imagine that when you're doing the group work, that whoever's heading up the group work is doing a quick case note in order to kind of fulfill that 2-week kind of mandatory thing in there. Is this also including the Power of Possible workshop? Are you doing that as well?
We do run the Power of Possible workshop as well. So that is being pretty much constantly run. We do have a workshop facilitator that is dedicated to pop workshops as well as other workshops. So that is
Right.
being consistently run and engaging clients as well. Yes.
Yeah,
Consistently, how often?
we're doing pop twice a month, so we're rotating through 10 days. We do 10 days virtually, and then we do an in-person for 5 days. So we just
Wonderful.
keep rotating through those.
Wonderful. So there's always a session, and so if somebody says that they're interested, within 2 weeks they're in. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And so how does that work in terms of, because you have all these workshops and you have the job search club and then you have the Power of Possible. How do they all work in tandem?
Well, the Power of Possible, we are limited to how many people we can put in at once. The same with the job search clubs, just due to space and stuff like that, right? So they complement each other, and like, so say we could give them, like, the workshop might need a physical need in this week right away, when then they can join pop later. We also find that some clients, although yes, interview skills and resumes and that kind of stuff is happening in pop, some clients need extra support with that. So even though they've covered it with pop, just even for like confidence building and or the job search clubs are perfect for that, because they're putting their skills to use. But if they have questions, then there's somebody there to help them.
Right. And are you finding that having these kind of these clubs and workshops and the Power of Possible, are you finding that you're able to allow the clients who are kind of capable of getting something from those workshops to attend those workshops and everything? And I would imagine that means that the caseworker is given more time to focus in on those clients who really do need that one-on-one support. Is that kind of what's happening?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And I think another thing about like having those workshops or job search clubs outside of pop is that sometimes too, like when you're having like the stream A's or the stream B's that might not necessarily be interested in going to the full pop, but might need some extra support in some of those areas, then they can, instead of having to commit to that full pop period, they can come and join us for a couple hours and get those hints and tips and tricks that they might be looking for.
And you kind of mentioned there for a minute that it kind of sounded like the Power of Possible was kind of in demand, which I think isn't the same across the network, because a lot of people have trouble just trying to convince clients to do this thing. So what are you saying to clients in order to have them say, oh my gosh, I want to get into this thing, that is getting to the point that it's filling up, that you might not be able to host additional people? What's going on there?
So one of the selling features we use for pop is we break it down for them. That is 30 hours of dedicated time that they're getting through pop to learn these skills, that if an EC was to do it individually, that's 30 appointments. So in 10 days and 30 hours with the pop facilitator, things could start moving a whole lot quicker, rather than you meeting with me this week for a resume, next week for job search skills, the following week for interview skills, right? So we sell it as it's a quicker feature that gives them all the skills that we need. It gives them the base that we need them to have, so that we can spend our time in their employment appointment sort of doing more advanced things with them.
Right. I imagine that kind of takes advantage of I find when I'm working with clients that sometimes they'll come in and they're ready. And then like a few weeks later, you don't hear from them. And then they come back again and they're ready again. But if you can kind of catch them when they're ready and kind of get them into it, that can certainly be helpful. Could you tell me a little bit more about the role of the business developer? When I think business developer, I'm kind of thinking like a job developer. But you said that they kind of focus in on the retention side of things. Can you tell me a little more about that?
So they do both. So they do have that job developer piece. They are the ones that make those employer connections locally, build and establish those relationships and maintain them, and advocate on clients' behalf. So that's kind of part of their pre-employment part of the team kind of thing. But they are the ones that are responsible. So they are the ones that, are the ones in constant contact and providing that support during that year of after employment has been reached. So their role is to ensuring that they're doing those contacts. If celebrating the client's wins for one, like congratulations, you got a job, like amazing, you've made it to 1 month, awesome stuff. But
Right.
also kind of taking the time for those that might be struggling and may have some questions or concerns on the job and don't know how to navigate that. So that's where they come in to support and provide some coaching or some problems, working with them for some problem solving skills, those kind of things. And
Right.
as well, they don't always, we know sometimes jobs don't work out as much as we try and we problem solve. Sometimes they're just not that good fit. So the business developer can step in at that time and help with, basic job search needs again, like updating their resume, connecting with employers again, those kind of things. We do find though that they benefit more if their needs are higher, like if they are starting to need some life stabilization things, or they really need to deep dive into that, maybe some career exploration because it didn't work out, then they
Yep.
do go back to the employment consultant. But then at that point, like it's a really
Okay.
close relationship between the two working together for that client to get work again.
Right. Right. I'm going to ask about an elephant in the room. Pay stubs.
Yep. Yep. Yes. So that
I think I think without everybody being off of mute, I heard a kind of oh.
yes.
So what's going on there? Are you having success there? And if so, what do you got going on?
Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to say they're all pay stubs every and each day. Absolutely, like obviously we all know that's a struggle.
Yeah.
We do our best. So our practices, if we're not already, in constant contact with them over some issues and working through that, we are making sure to reach out at every milestone. So we make sure on that first day of the milestone, if they're working, congratulating them for hitting that milestone, having them just confirm that they're still working there and all the hours and the wages are the same. And then we ask, once you get that pay stub, can you please send it our way? We know that first day they're not going to have that pay stub, right? Like
Of course.
you're working that day, so you're not going to see that pay stub for probably another couple weeks. So,
Right.
if they respond, say, yeah, I'm still working there. Everything's the same. I'll send it when I get it. Then we will wait that 2 weeks, right? We're not going to keep
Yeah.
harassing them like the next day, because we know you don't have it. So we try to give them the time to be able to get that. And then, so we put the reminder out, hey, don't forget to send us that pay stub. And then, if we still haven't got it, maybe the following week, send another reminder. We try to use all methods of contact, like phoning a client is huge because getting them on the phone, being able to have that conversation with them, not only helps, helps us get the information we need and request that pay stub. And sometimes, there's a lot of questions why, even though, we've kind of explained that and everything, but those phone conversations really help. But then we also like do the reminders, or depending on the client, email might be the better way. So depending on the client, it might be email, it might be text. So we kind of try to keep track of that as well as the best method of getting a hold of them.
Right.
We do. So I think something that might help, but we're always looking for ways to improve. But we do mention the retention and the pay stubs and those checkpoints at intake. We send, after the intake is done, we send a letter along with some other information that outlines retention and why we require it and all that. Once they tell us they've got a job, the employment consultant then reminds them again what's going to happen, and that, that the retention specialist is going to take over that part. And then right away, they're getting an email or a card or something from us, congratulating them and just letting them know this is what we're here for. We're here to support you for the next year. All those things, all the good things, like, the job search support, the offsite coaching, the celebrating your successes. But then we also put the reminder in there for the pay stubs as well.
That's great. That's great. I have found because not all organizations do a separation between the kind of job developer and the caseworker. I think you call them employment consultants. Is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Not all places do a separation there. And one of the difficulties that I've found is when there is a separation, I'm kind of curious about the ratio, like how many employment consultants to business developers you have. But also when there is that separation there, I found that employment consultants are more focused on trying to sell their client to the business developer, as opposed to coming completely honestly and truly and saying, I always go on about, making sure they have the skills, abilities, education, and everything needed for the job, but also looking at the limitations and saying, do these limitations at all relate to the job? Are we going to have to ask for accommodations? And if so, what sorts of accommodations were you kind of considering? So how do you, or do you, do you, and if so, how do you kind of maintain that, I'll call it honesty, between the employment consultant and the business developer, to ensure that the business developer is able to go to the employers and come forward and in a, we'll say, assertive way, to make sure that the client's needs for all of that are actually being met? Big question.
So, well, I just want to be honest.
Yeah.
Because we actually have two different models running. So we have a Caledonia employment site and Dunville site. They do both. They're the employment consultant and the business developer. So our Brantford site under St. Leonard's is the only one with the split. And we found it works for us based on our intakes. So with the smaller caseloads in the Haldeman area, they seem to work a little better doing the whole thing. We're here in Brantford, we found it's easier to split.
Right.
And we just encourage everyone, you're not going to help your client if you're trying to make a sales pitch to your business developer, right? Your business developer is always going to do the best for the client, but they need to have the full information in order to best support that client, because this is about the client journey and the client success. Yes, we all have numbers to focus on. We know that. But we want to focus on the clients and what's best for them. So
absolutely,
it's always in your best interest to tell your business developer everything about your client, where the barriers might be, any sort of potential issues or red flags that you've seen, so that we can best support the client as to where, they would be successful out in the workforce.
If I can step in too,
please.
I think too, the constant communication and just the way to set up. So working together as a team to support that client right from the beginning. So it's not a handoff it's not a handoff kind of thing or anything like that. You're working together, right? So there's a lot of consultation going on between employment consultants and business developers, to even come up with ideas for employment for someone that may need to come, like what is, like, with, this is their limitations, what might be best suited. And that's a good conversation to have with business developers, because they're the ones with the employer contacts and know what they're looking for or what they could advocate for. We also do regular case management meetings as a whole. So not only is it just those mini groups, but as an entire group where we are talking about clients that, you know, we might be having a difficult time with and brainstorming and stuff there. So I think we are pretty good at the honesty part because we know that, like she's saying, is the best way to support the client.
That's great. And this is a kind of question about who is the client, right? Because so I think there's like a continuum between temp agency and Employment Ontario, where the temp agency, the client's the employer, and Employment Ontario, generally we think of the job seeker as a client. And I haven't seen a lot of organizations find a really good middle ground between the two of those. And with business, with job developers or business developers, sometimes they're kind of protective over their employers, and you know, they want to, of course, maintain that relationship and everything. And so how do you balance that? Or where do you find the balance between the two? Yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
I feel like because like some in past instances when, you know, placements and stuff are a bigger thing and there may have been targets for those kind of things that may have promoted those, like, I'm keeping my employers to myself because I got to meet my targets, where as now we find the BDs are working together. You know, some employers like just one contact, and so they have that main contact and they work with them. Some of our employers, you know, it's like, you know, all three of you can contact me, we're good with that. But they are continuously talking with each other to let each other know so that all three aren't contacting the same one at once too, working together to make sure that the employers are getting the best and not being, you know, harassed or anything by us also. But I think it's really good that, like, there isn't really those targets for the employers. It's just all about the client service and making those connections. So they tend to work really well together to develop those relationships.
That's great. That's great. Okay, and so, you know, we kind of spoke briefly at the beginning about the increasing caseload sizes, and I'm wondering, how have you been experiencing this? And you kind of spoke to this a little bit with regards to workshops and Powerful Hospital and things like that. But so if you have been experiencing this, what have your employment consultants actually been doing to try to keep up with the increasing size of the caseloads?
So some of the tricks we're using, because right now the intakes are high and the job entries are not flowing the way we would like them to. It's a tough labor market out there right now. And that's where where I say we could fit in like 8 to 10 appointments a day. Like, you're knocking those appointments down to half an hour. And we're telling our client, you have half an hour. We're really focused on getting this done today.
Right.
So if it's an A client, it could be just checking in with them to see, you know, what'd you apply to this time? Hey, I saw this posting on a different website. You know, did you know about this one? They're like, no, I didn't. You know, I'll find that and apply to it. The groups help a little bit. And in all honesty, if people are desperate for stuff, Sandra and I are doing appointments. I just did an appointment at noon before I came here.
Right.
We have an all hands on deck policy and everyone chips in. Like, I can't tell you what a great staff team we have.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I imagine that's the half hour is aside from intakes.
Yeah, getting through that cat could be time consuming depending on what happens when the answers come in.
Yeah. And and I've heard I've heard it analogized as very similar to a doctor's appointment where you come in, if your arm's hurting or something like that, you walk in and you say, okay, my arm's hurting. And then, inevitably, a lot of the time in the doctor's appointment, it's like, oh, I also have dry skin. I also have this. I also have this. And the doctor has to be kind of set that boundary and say, okay, look, this appointment was for this, and we can set another appointment for these other things that you're talking about. Or maybe this is where the analogy kind of breaks down, but maybe it's like, okay, we're going to do a workshop, or maybe we're going to do something along that line in order to help a larger amount of people. But yeah, no, I think having those kind of shorter appointments and ideally more focused appointments, and that's where, with the supported employment team, we have the occupational therapists if they have some sort of significant mental health barrier or mental illness barrier to employment, that you can have them connect with the occupational therapist in order to kind of focus on that route, while being able to focus with the employment coach on the things that they need to do logistically in order to find work. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
We're a little spoiled at St. Leonard's because we do have several different departments, such as
Right.
crisis, mental health, addictions, withdrawal management. So when you are going through that CAT and some of those, triggering type of questions, we always acknowledge, okay, let's put a pin in that right now. Let's get through this CAT. And at the end of the CAT, make sure that they have the connections to the supports that they need.
Right. Are you finding so the intakes, you said that you're doing is it completely walk-in or mostly walk-in, first of all? And are you doing that all in person, or is there some allocation for virtual? How's that working for you?
So our intakes are generally walk-in, people walking in the door.
Right.
We do get the OW referrals. We have a referral form on our website as well that people can fill out that I get. We do our appointments either virtually or in person. It depends on what the person wants.
Mhm.
We do ask our clients to at least come see us once because we like to see their faces.
Right.
Because we find that personal face-to-face connection is very useful, especially
Yep,
with rapport building.
I can see
Um,
that.
and then, you know, clients are really engaged this month, next month, they might not be. We just
Right.
try to be open with our clients to go, okay, come back and see me now that you're ready again. And try not
Yeah.
to pass any judgment that they disappeared for a bit. But one of the things we do try to do with clients we haven't seen in a bit is we hold what we call regular call parties, where from
Mhm.
4:30 to 6:30, we will all stay in office. The office is closed, but all we do is hit people that we haven't heard from in like 4 weeks,
Right.
right? I buy pizza for the team. We make a little party of it. Everyone gets a list of people to call. And we found it
Yeah, and
very
that's
useful.
I bet you get a lot of job entries off that, because generally if you're not contacting them between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30, well, back in the day, we used to because the follow-ups weren't as big of a deal, and so you used to call them, and all you had to do was check off a thing on a sheet of paper to say that they're working. And if you tried multiple times during the day, you just kind of like, oh yeah, they're probably working, and that was like the end of it.
Yeah.
But now, of course, we need to do a lot more in order to even potentially to the point of getting a pay stub and everything else. So I imagine that after our calls, if people are open to it, it can be very beneficial. Yeah. And so you said there's like 6 to 8 appointments per day when you're not doing the walk-ins. Are you finding that those 6 to 8 appointments are mostly virtual or mostly in person or a mix of both?
Uh, I'd say we're probably 60% in person, 40% virtual. I mean, a lot of our clients like to come see us.
Yeah.
right? Our clients also know that, you know, if their employment consultant is off, so if someone's on vacation,
Right.
the clients get told, we have a buddy system, so another employment consultant will be the go-to person.
Yep.
So the client can come in and go, oh, my employment consultant's off, can I speak to this one? I mean, in all honesty, anyone will help the
Yeah.
client,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes I don't even
Yeah.
bother getting the employment consultant responsible for looking after that. I'll just deal with it myself. I happen to, my
Right.
office is right in our resource area.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of access to what's going on out there.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, do you have any specific strategies around keeping those retention clients engaged through the process?
So I think it's a lot of the things that we have touched base on already. So really the
Yep.
letting them know from the get-go that it's a thing and reminding them along the way that this is happening and that we're their team. You know, really celebrating their successes. We've done things like client appreciation nights, and we, you know, have little food set up and have them come down and chat with them. We've run contests before. When they do get that job, all of our sites have like this bulletin board type thing where it's like ring the bell, so they get to ring the bell and everybody celebrates that they
Yeah.
got the job. We're obviously going to have, you know, we do have unable to contacts. Like, let's be real,
Yep.
we lose some engagement, absolutely. But then that's when, you know, those call parties come in handy, or, you know, we've sent out thinking of you cards or things like that, or, you know, done internal
Mhm.
contests, those kind of things to hopefully re-engage.
We'll remind them
That's
that
great.
even though they're working, we're still here to support them.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you need anything, give us a call, right? Because people
Mhm.
forget once they start working, you know, if you need some more clothes, or if you went to work with old work boots and now need new ones, you know, we're still here for that kind of financial support for them.
Yeah, and I've heard some places use things like LinkedIn Learning or things like that to uh, be an additional potential source of engagement. You know, if they're working in the job and they need to learn something on Excel, it's like, oh well, we can connect you with LinkedIn Learning and see if you can do that sort of thing as well. So
We encourage our clients, so the Brantford Library, if you have a library card, you can access free LinkedIn Learning through them. We're also co-located with the Brant Skills Center or Literacy Center here. So it's
mhm.
nice to just be able to walk them over, introduce them. So it's just another friend of mine who's gonna
Yeah.
help you out and get you some Excel testing. And at St. Leonard's, we've actually purchased some assessments. So we have an e-learning platform that we can set clients up on to learn things like Excel, Word, interview skills, that sort of stuff.
That's great. That's great. Um, so I know that St. Leonard specifically is kind of like a hub with many different resources inside of it. And I imagine when it comes to setting those boundaries and being able to say like, you know, look what you're talking about with me is really important, but I'm not the person to help you with this particular thing, and having those kind of resources and everything outside of that. How might you recommend other employment service providers who maybe don't have that hub network to connect with and coordinate with other services to ensure that you know the caseworkers are more familiar with them and better able to connect their clients to those sorts of services?
I can say something that I know we've done in the past for some services that aren't necessarily linked to ours. So, you know, we have regular staff meetings where all sites, you know, join. We do it usually through Zoom. So sometimes we make the connections with some of those community agencies and have them come in and do a little presentation about the services that they offer, who to
Right.
contact for those referrals, those kind of things. That's one of the ways.
Yeah. that makes a lot of sense.
And I mean, Brantford is a small community.
Right.
I've been at St. Leonard's for 31 years now. And a lot of times I'm able to say, well, we're going to refer you over to this place. You're going to end up meeting with so and so. I happen to know them. And that's what
Mhm.
we like about the warm handoff. It's, you know, we're always like, I am not the expert in this, so I don't want to, you know, say things that might not be right. I'm going to refer you to this
Right.
expert over here. I'm not leaving you. It's
Yeah.
just that piece needs to be done over there because they are the expert in the situation. I'm the
Yeah.
expert in employment. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to listen. But you really need to be over here, give you all the
Yeah.
resources, but these are the people you need to meet with because they're the expert in what the issue is that you're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of
But
sense.
in Brantford, we have a community partner table. So St. Leonard's, the school boards, CMHA is at the table, OW's at the table. So we're able to sit at these tables and you can bring a case forward. Obviously, we don't identify clients or anything, but this is what I'm struggling with. And someone at that table has an idea.
What's this table called?
We just call it the community partner table.
Wonderful. All right. And okay. So the other, it's kind of related to this, but the other question I have is as employment professionals going through the common assessment tool, um, how how can we use that initial appointment to kind of process and cultivate better outcomes for our clients? And it might be related to making appropriate referrals and things like that. But any thoughts or suggestions you have on that, I think would benefit the network.
I would start by making the cat a conversation, not a pile of questions,
Hmm.
right? I've been to other services where all they do is ask you a bunch of questions like that, and some of those questions clients find intrusive. Um,
Hmm.
so it's more of a conversation. So I don't, say, have you worried about food in the last 12 months? Have you not had food?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, with your current financial situation, how is the food situation at home? Are you running into any trouble with anything? Is that something you could use assistance with? Right?
Right.
So more of a conversation in terms of I'm here to assist, but I need you to tell me what is happening, right?
Hmm.
In terms of that life stabilization stuff, so I can make sure I'm giving you the best support I can.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've been really pushing through a lot of the work I've been doing to uh not to get away from those common assessment questions, but to ask questions like you're saying in a very much more natural way. And if you can deduce based on the conversation that you're having with the client that they're having food insecurity or something along that line, you don't need to go back and re-ask that question when it comes up in the common assessment. Just click yes and you're good. I
I
talk a lot about that with disabilities too, when it comes to, if somebody says that they have, what's the example I always use? The thing that hurts your hands and feet and knees and can't come up
arthritis.
with it now. Arthritis, thank you. Where if somebody says they have arthritis, you can ask a whole bunch of questions related to that in the moment that are going to make sense, right? Like, where do you experience the arthritis? Do you experience pain with the arthritis? Is it all the time or sometimes? And you can answer a ton of questions on the common assessment in the moment. And then so once you actually get to the common assessment, then you can kind of just click through and not need to ask that all again. Yeah.
Yes, when I train new staff, I sometimes confuse them because I don't really follow the questions. I've been
Yeah.
doing this for 18 years. I started with an employment training needs assessment, which was basically kind of the same thing. And I learned how to incorporate that into a conversation. So
Yes.
I'm leading the conversation. I'm not worried about the questions because I know I'm going to be able to answer them as I
Yeah.
get through. But I like the natural flow of the conversation to go because I find it builds rapport better. than me going, oh,
Absolutely.
stop here, I need to answer this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One question that I kind of wanted to ask about company culture, as well as keeping your frontline staff motivated when the workload it's a lot, especially compared to 4 or 5 years ago. So how do you, as kind of leadership within your organization, cultivate that company culture and keep people motivated regardless of the massive workload?
Well, the agency as a whole, we have a lot of staff appreciation stuff. We just did a big breakfast for everyone. We have access to put in suggestions for things we would like. We have a cross-functional team for health and wellness. So someone from every department sits on this team and they plan things like paint night for us. In our individual department at Brant Employment, I keep a stash of candy in my office. So I am the office to come to when you need a little sugar rush. I also have a tiny screaming goat that if you're frustrated, you can come press it and it will scream for you. But a lot of times we ask them. We hold regular work plans where we meet once a year, set some goals for next year, but we ask them what they want. Candy is what they asked for last year, so that's what they got. Today we had ice cream sundae. We had an ice cream sundae bar for lunch. When the weather's nicer, I load my car with camping chairs. We have a little patch of grass in the back parking lot, so I call it picnic in the park, where I'll put the camping chairs and blankets out so they can all go lunch together in the nice weather. But we spend a lot of time asking them what they want.
And I'm actually hearing a lot of things that have to do with mental health in there, which I think are important. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, we're just going to go and set it aside for lunch, but like there's massive benefits in terms of both physiologically and psychologically to getting outside and having a sun above your head and all that sort of stuff. So that's really good. Sandra, you were going to say something.
Yeah. So I think too, sometimes we just acknowledge the frustration. Like we know sometimes it's hard. We know sometimes things are frustrated. We kind of we acknowledge it, but then we kind of encourage them not to sit in it. So then we work with them, like, how can we move past it? What can we do to, to make this workable or whatever, and then that's when they, they give the feedback and we kind of put some things in play. But I think it's important too, to not necessarily, we stay positive, but it's not always sunshine and roses. We know it. We want them to know that we acknowledge that, yes, things are hard, but what can we do? Right.
I mean, our director, Malcolm, he will come sit and run the front desk. Right. Like our team sees that our leadership pitches in wherever they're needed. And I feel that keeps them motivated because I'm not asking them to do any more than I'm not prepared to do myself. So we recently lost an employment consultant, and I have been an employment consultant holding that caseload for the last 3 weeks. Right. So they see that, when they found the person was leaving, I saw their faces and went, but wait, you're not getting their caseload. Right. So that eased a lot back.
I imagine.
But then they kind of went, but you're going to take it. And I'm like, yep, because this is how we work. Right? Everyone pitches in where they need to.
Well, that is a good place to stop. I want to say thank you again to my guests, Sandra and Tara from St. Leonard's. This was another episode of the Hub and Path podcast. Stay client focused and don't forget to take care of yourself. Until next time.